If someone told me 6 months ago that I'd be sitting in a courtroom watching my own daughter-in-law try to have me declared incompetent, I would have laughed. But 6 months ago, I thought Brittany actually cared about me. My name is Margaret Rose Williams, and I'm 68 years old. For 43 years, I was half of Robert and Margaret. We had a good life in our suburban home in Ohio, the kind of house with a white picket fence and rose bushes that I tended every spring. Robert passed 6 months ago, and I'll be honest with you, learning to be just Margaret has been the hardest thing I've ever done. But I was managing. The life insurance was substantial, our savings were intact, and the house was paid off decades ago. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I was independent. That's when Brittany decided to help. Brittany is my daughter-in-law, married to my son Derek for 8 years now. She's 32, works part-time at a boutique, and has always been, well, let's just say we were polite to each other. She's one of those women who smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes, if you know what I mean. After Robert's funeral, something changed in Brittany. Suddenly, she was calling every day. "Mom Williams," she'd say in that sweet voice that never quite sounded sincere. "I know this must be overwhelming for you. Let me help with the paperwork." At first, I was grateful. There were so many documents after Robert's death, insurance forms, bank statements, tax papers, the kind of business that Robert had always handled. When Brittany offered to organize everything, I thought, what a thoughtful daughter-in-law. I should have trusted my instincts. "Mom, at your age, these financial decisions are so complex," she'd say, reaching for papers before I could even look at them. "Let me handle the heavy lifting. You shouldn't stress yourself with all these numbers and legal terms." Every time she said something like that, I felt a little knot in my stomach. At my age, I've been handling household finances since before she was born. But she said it with such concern, such apparent caring, that I started to doubt myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overwhelmed. Maybe I did need help. Looking back now, I realized that was exactly what she wanted me to think. I thought she was being kind. I had no idea she was already building a case against me. Brittany's help was starting to feel more like taking over. It began with small things. I'd look for my bank statements and they'd be gone. "Oh, Mom Williams," Brittany would say when I asked, "remember? You gave those to me yesterday so I could organize them for you. You seem so confused about the numbers." Confused? I'd been balancing checkbooks since 1975. But when I tried to remember giving her those papers, my mind went blank. Grief does strange things to your memory, doesn't it? Then it was the insurance papers, then my investment statements, then Robert's pension documents. One by one, my important papers were disappearing into Brittany's organization system. "I'm keeping everything safe for you, Mom," she'd assure me. "These documents are too important to leave lying around where you might misplace them again." Again? When had I misplaced them the first time? The strange thing was, Brittany always seemed to know more about my finances than I did. She'd mention account numbers I didn't remember giving her. She'd reference conversations with my bank that I didn't remember having. "Don't you remember, Mom? You called the bank on Tuesday about your savings account. The manager was concerned about your questions. You seemed a little mixed up about your balance." I didn't remember calling any bank. But then again, I'd been forgetting a lot of things lately. Small things, like where I put my keys or what I had for breakfast. Normal things for someone my age, especially someone dealing with grief. At least, that's what I told myself. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. I was looking for my homeowner's insurance papers because the roof needed some work after the last storm. I'd searched everywhere, Robert's desk, the filing cabinet, even the kitchen junk drawer where important things sometimes ended up. "Brittany," I called when she arrived for her weekly check-in. "Where are my insurance papers? I need them for the roofing estimate." She paused for just a moment, and I swear I saw something flicker across her face. Annoyance? Guilt? "Oh, Mom, remember. You gave them to me yesterday. You were so scattered when I stopped by. You kept asking the same questions over and over. That's what worries us. I don't remember giving you anything yesterday, and I certainly don't remember being scattered." "Exactly," she said, and her voice had an edge now. "That's exactly what worries Derek and me." That's when I noticed her purse. It was sitting open on my kitchen counter, and I could see the corner of a familiar manila folder inside. My insurance folder. The one with my homeowner's policy and Robert's life insurance papers. Brittany, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Why are my insurance papers in your purse? She followed my gaze and quickly snapped the purse shut. Mom, you asked me to keep them safe, remember? You said you were worried about losing them? I said no such thing. You did, Mom. Yesterday, when I stopped by. You were very upset about forgetting where you'd put your car keys. They were in the freezer, by the way. And you said you were worried about losing important papers, too. Car keys in the freezer? I had no memory of that either. This is exactly what Derek and I have been discussing, Brittany continued, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I was beginning to recognize. These memory lapses, the confusion about conversations we've had. We're worried about you, Mom Williams. Really worried. After she left that night, I sat in my living room feeling like I was losing my mind. Was I becoming forgetful? Was I really having conversations I couldn't remember? That night, I realized she wasn't just stealing my papers. She was stealing my identity as a competent adult. The family meeting was Derek's idea, but I could see Brittany's fingerprints all over it. They arrived on Sunday afternoon, both wearing serious expressions like they were attending a funeral. In a way, I suppose they were. The funeral of my independence. Mom, Derek said, settling into Robert's old recliner like he owned the place. Brittany and I need to talk to you about some concerns we've been having. Concerns. That word had been following me around for weeks now. Brittany perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap like a school principal about to deliver bad news. Mom Williams, we love you so much. You know that, right? Everything we're about to say comes from a place of love. Whenever someone starts a conversation by telling you how much they love you, you know you're in trouble. We've been noticing some changes, Derek continued, not quite meeting my eyes. Forgetting where you put things, confusion about financial matters, getting mixed up about conversations we've had. I am not confused about conversations, I said firmly. I remember perfectly well what people say to me. Do you, Mom? Brittany's voice was soft, gentle, the way you'd talk to a child or someone very sick. Because last week, you called Derek 3 times asking the same question about Dad's pension. And when I stopped by on Tuesday, you asked me to help you find your car keys. We found them in the freezer, remember? I wanted to argue, but the truth was, I didn't remember putting keys in the freezer. I didn't remember calling Derek multiple times. The memory gaps were like holes in Swiss cheese, there, but somehow invisible until someone pointed them out. And then there was the incident at Kroger, Derek added, his voice heavy with what sounded like genuine concern. Mrs. Henderson called me afterward. She said you seemed lost, asked the cashier what year it was. I did no such thing. The words burst out of me, hot with indignation. Mom, Derek said gently, Mrs. Henderson has known you for 20 years. Why would she lie? See? Brittany leaned forward, her eyes wide with fake sympathy. This is exactly what we're talking about, getting defensive when we're just trying to help. These aggressive outbursts, the memory issues, the confusion about basic information. I am not having outbursts. I'm defending myself against accusations that aren't true. Derek and Brittany exchanged a look. The kind of look medical professionals give each other over a patient who doesn't understand their own diagnosis. Mom, Derek said, his voice taking on that careful tone people use with the mentally unstable. We think it might be time to consider some additional support. Maybe someone to help manage your finances, handle the complex paperwork, make sure bills get paid on time. I've been paying bills since before you were born, Derek Michael Williams. We know, Mom, and you did a great job. But things are different now. You're dealing with grief. You're alone in this big house. There's so much to keep track of. Brittany nodded along like a sympathetic nurse. We're not trying to take over your life, Mom Williams. We just want to make sure you're safe, protected. What if you forgot to pay the electric bill? What if someone took advantage of your current state? Current state, like I was temporarily insane. We've been talking to a lawyer, Derek continued, and my blood ran cold. About guardianship options, just temporarily until you're feeling more like yourself. This is myself. I stood up, my voice rising. This is me, grieving my husband of 43 years, trying to adjust to living alone for the first time in my adult life. That doesn't make me incompetent. And that aggressive behavior is exactly what concerns us, Brittany said, pulling out her phone. I think I should document this episode. Episode? Document? What is this, a medical exam? Mom, please sit down, Derek said. You're getting worked up over nothing. Nothing? You just threatened to have me declared incompetent. We haven't threatened anything. Brittany's voice was calm, reasonable. We're trying to have a loving conversation about your well-being, and you're responding with paranoia and anger. This is exactly the kind of concerning behavior we've been documenting. Documenting? The word hit me like ice water. We have a responsibility to keep track of these incidents, Mom Williams, for your own protection. The lawyer said documentation would be important if we need to pursue legal options. They left 20 minutes later after extracting a promise that I'd think about their suggestions. As I watched Derek's car pull out of my driveway, the driveway I'd been pulling into since before he was born, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't about my well-being. This was a carefully planned attack, and I was about to fight back. The process server caught me coming home from church on a beautiful Wednesday morning. I was feeling peaceful, having spent an hour with my church family, when a stranger approached me in my own driveway. Margaret Rose Williams? Yes? You've been served. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than it should have for a few pieces of paper. Around me, my neighbors were tending their gardens, walking their dogs, living their normal Wednesday lives, while my world tilted off its axis. I waited until I was inside to open it. The legal language was dense, formal, terrifying, but the meaning was crystal clear. Derek and Brittany were petitioning the court to have me declared incompetent. They wanted guardianship over my person and my property, claiming I was no longer capable of making sound decisions about my life or my finances. The accusations were devastating. Progressive mental deterioration, financial confusion and poor judgment, inability to maintain personal safety, danger to herself and her assets. They'd listed specific incidents. Subject became confused at grocery store, repeatedly asking staff what year it was. Subject cannot locate important documents, shows signs of paranoia when family members attempt to help. Subject displays erratic behavior and aggressive responses to reasonable suggestions. Each lie was crafted carefully, with just enough truth to make it believable. I had asked a question at Kroger, not about the year, but about whether they still carried my usual brand of coffee. I couldn't find my documents because Brittany had taken them. I had gotten defensive because I was being attacked. But on paper, written in legal language, I sounded like a woman losing her mind. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. 6 days to prepare for a battle I'd never seen coming. I called Robert Hutchinson immediately. He'd been Robert's lawyer and friend for over 20 years, handling everything from our wills to business contracts. If anyone would fight for me, it would be him. Margaret, he said when I reached him, I got a copy of the petition this morning. I've been practicing law for 35 years, and I can tell you this is one of the most aggressive guardianship filings I've ever seen. They think I'm losing my mind, Robert. I've known you for 20 years, Margaret. You're one of the sharpest women I've ever met. These accusations are not only false, they're malicious. The question is, why? What do you mean? Guardianship gives them complete control over your finances, your property, even where you live. They could sell your house, access your accounts, make investment decisions. We're talking about substantial assets here. Robert's life insurance, your savings, the house, his pension. Someone stands to gain a lot of money from this. The pieces started clicking into place. Brittany's sudden interest in helping, her knowledge of my financial details, the disappeared documents. What do? We fight, and we start by investigating what they really want. In my experience, when family members move this aggressively, it's usually about money. That evening, Derek called. His voice was different, colder, more formal. Mom, I heard you got the papers today. You heard? You mean from your lawyer? Look, this doesn't have to be adversarial. Just agree to the guardianship arrangement. Let us handle the financial stuff, and you can focus on taking care of yourself. Let you handle my money, you mean? Don't be paranoid, Mom. This is about protecting you. From what? From living my own life? From making mistakes that could cost you everything? You're not thinking clearly these days. I'm thinking clearly enough to wonder why my own son is trying to have me declared incompetent. Because I love you. Because watching you struggle like this is breaking my heart. Just make this easy on everyone. After he hung up, I sat in Robert's chair and cried for the first time since his funeral. Not from grief this time, but from betrayal. My own child, the baby I'd raised for 30 years, was now my enemy. But I was about to discover this betrayal went much deeper than I ever imagined. Walking into that courthouse was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The building was imposing, all marble and authority, filled with people who looked like they belonged there. I felt small, old, out of place, exactly how Brittany wanted me to feel. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten around our small community, and it seemed like half the neighborhood had come to watch the spectacle. Some faces were sympathetic, others curious, a few openly judgmental. I could hear the whispered conversations. Such a shame. She seemed so sharp. Grief can do terrible things to the mind. Brittany and Derek sat at the plaintiff's table with their lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit. They'd dressed for the occasion. Derek in his best suit, Brittany in a conservative dress that made her look like the concerned daughter-in-law she was pretending to be. I sat with Robert Hutchinson, feeling underdressed in my simple blue dress, feeling every one of my 68 years. The judge was a stern-looking man in his 50s. Judge Harrison, Robert had told me. Fair, but no nonsense. Someone who'd heard every sob story and family drama in the book. "This is a petition for guardianship," Judge Harrison announced, filed by Derek Williams and Brittany Williams regarding Margaret Rose Williams. The petitioners claim that Mrs. Williams is no longer competent to manage her own affairs. Brittany's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, this is not a decision the petitioners make lightly. They love Mrs. Williams deeply and are only seeking guardianship because they fear for her safety and financial security." Then Brittany took the stand, and I watched her transform into someone I'd never seen before. Gone was the slightly cold daughter-in-law. In her place was a woman radiating concern and heartbreak. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling with emotion, "I love my mother-in-law dearly. For 8 years, she's been like a real mother to me. But watching her decline since my father-in-law's death has been heartbreaking." She painted a picture of a woman losing her grip on reality. "Last month, she couldn't remember giving me her financial papers. When I reminded her, she accused me of stealing them. She becomes agitated when family members try to help her. Just yesterday, she forgot what year her husband died." Judge Harrison leaned forward. "These are serious concerns, Mrs. Williams. We're not trying to take away her dignity, Your Honor. We just want to protect her assets before she loses everything to confusion or predators who might take advantage of her condition." The word predators hung in the air like an accusation, as if I was a helpless animal, easy prey for anyone clever enough to exploit my weakness. Then Derek testified, and this hurt more than anything Brittany had said. "Your Honor, my mother raised me to be strong and independent. She's always been sharp as a tack, handled all the finances when Dad was alive. But she's not the mother I grew up with anymore." His voice cracked with what sounded like genuine pain. "Since Dad died, something's changed. She trusts no one, fights every suggestion we make to help her. Last week, she called me 3 times asking the same question about Dad's pension benefits. She had no memory of our previous conversations." Their lawyer presented evidence, photographs of my kitchen that made it look chaotic and disorganized, bank statements with my expenses highlighted to look erratic, written statements from acquaintances expressing concern about my behavior. Mrs. Henderson from down the street had written that I seemed confused and disoriented at the grocery store. My pharmacist noted that I'd asked repetitive questions about my prescription. Even my hairdresser had contributed a statement about my unusual forgetfulness during my last appointment. Death by 1,000 small cuts. Each statement alone meant nothing, but together they painted a picture of a woman losing her mind. When my turn came to testify, I felt the weight of every eye in that courtroom. My hands were shaking as I took the oath. "Mrs. Williams," Brittany's lawyer began, "can you tell us what year your husband passed away?" 2023. "Are you certain about that date?" "Of course I'm certain." She consulted her notes. "Mrs. Williams, the bank manager testified that you told him it was 2022 when you visited last month. Do you remember that conversation?" My mind went blank. Had I said 2022? I remembered being upset during that bank visit, missing Robert terribly. Had I misspoken? I may have been thinking about when he was diagnosed. That was 2022. But you told the bank manager it was the year he died, not when he was diagnosed. Can you explain the discrepancy? I couldn't. The harder I tried to remember that conversation, the more confused I became. Around me, I could feel the courtroom's attention like a weight. I could see doubt creeping into faces that had been sympathetic moments before. Mrs. Williams, where do you keep your important financial documents? In my home office filing cabinet. All of them. Well, some of them. Some are. I realized I didn't actually know where most of them were anymore. Brittany had taken so many, organized them in her system that I couldn't access. You seem uncertain, Mrs. Williams. My daughter-in-law has been helping me organize them. Because you were having trouble managing them yourself? No, because she offered to help. But you just testified that you're uncertain where they are now. Doesn't that suggest some confusion about your financial documents? Every answer I gave seemed to make things worse. Every explanation sounded like an excuse. I could see Judge Harrison taking notes, his expression growing more concerned with each exchange. As I stumbled over that simple question about my husband's death date, I saw satisfaction flash across Brittany's face. She had me exactly where she wanted me, confused, defensive, looking every bit like the incompetent old woman she'd painted me to be. But she had no idea what I'd discovered the night before. That night, after the humiliation in court, I sat in my living room feeling completely defeated. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was confused. Maybe I really was losing my mind. The house felt empty without Robert's presence, hollow in a way that went beyond physical absence. For 43 years, he'd been my partner in everything. Decisions big and small, daily conversations, shared memories that validated my experience of our life together. Now I was alone with my own version of events, and a courtroom full of people seemed convinced that my version was unreliable. Unable to sleep, I found myself wandering into Robert's home office. I'd avoided it since his death. It was too painful, too full of his presence. His coffee mug still sat on the desk, next to his reading glasses. His calendar still showed appointments for March, when his world stopped, but mine kept going. Robert had been meticulous about record-keeping. 43 years of marriage to an accountant had taught me that. Every receipt saved, every document filed, every financial decision documented. If I was really losing my mind, maybe his records would help me figure out what was real and what wasn't. I started going through his filing cabinets, looking for anything that might help me understand my current financial situation. That's when I noticed something odd. Behind Robert's diploma, the frame was slightly crooked. Robert never left things crooked. I straightened it, and that's when I saw the small safe built into the wall behind it. I'd forgotten all about that safe. Robert had it installed years ago for our most important documents, but we'd used it so rarely that it had faded from my memory. The combination, our anniversary date, June 15th, 1980, 06-15-80. The safe opened with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Inside were backup copies of everything: our insurance policies, investment statements, bank records, my social security information, everything Brittany claimed I'd lost or misplaced. But there was something else. A manila envelope with my name written in Robert's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before his death and a USB drive. "My dearest Margaret," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're in trouble." My hands shook as I continued reading. I've suspected for months that Brittany has been copying our financial documents when she visits. I've seen her taking pictures of papers on my desk, and last week I caught her trying to access this safe. I didn't want to worry you while I was fighting my own battle, but I've been documenting everything. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The USB drive contains security camera footage from my office. I installed the camera 3 months ago when I first became suspicious. Margaret, she's been planning something for months. I was going to confront Derek after my surgery, but he never got the chance. If she's coming after you now, if she's questioning your competence or trying to gain control of our assets, show this evidence to Robert Hutchinson. Trust no one else. Remember what I always told you. You are the strongest person I know. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Fight back with everything you have. I love you always. Your devoted husband, Robert. With trembling hands, I plugged the USB drive into Robert's computer. The footage was crystal clear, time-stamped and dated. There was Brittany in Robert's office, photographing bank statements. There she was copying account numbers from his investment portfolio. There she was trying combination after combination on the safe. The timestamps showed she'd been coming into this office for months, always when I was at church or running errands, always when Robert was too weak from chemo to notice. She'd been planning this since before Robert died. While I was caring for my dying husband, while she was bringing casseroles and offering sympathy, she was building a case against my mental competence. I stayed up all night going through the evidence. Bank statements showing my actual spending patterns. Normal, reasonable, careful. Medical records showing my clean bill of health from my last physical. Financial records proving that every accusation in their petition was fabricated. By morning, I had a complete picture of Brittany's conspiracy. She'd been setting me up for months, creating false evidence of confusion and incompetence while systematically stealing my documents and financial information. The confused old widow Brittany had described in court was fiction. The real Margaret, the one Robert had loved and believed in, was still here. She was just buried under months of gaslighting and manipulation. But now I had proof. And I had something else Brittany hadn't counted on. The fury of a woman who'd discovered she'd been betrayed by someone she'd trusted. They thought they were dealing with a confused old widow. They were about to meet a woman with 68 years of life experience and nothing left to lose. I was waiting outside Robert Hutchinson's office when he arrived the next morning. I'd been there since 7 a.m. with my evidence box, watching the sunrise paint the downtown buildings gold while I planned my counterattack. "Margaret?" Robert looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing here so early?" "I found something," I said, lifting the box. "Something that changes everything." An hour later, Robert sat back in his leather chair, his face pale with shock. The USB footage was playing on his computer screen, showing Brittany photographing my financial documents for the third time. "Margaret," he said slowly, "this isn't just guardianship fraud. This is conspiracy to commit elder abuse, theft by deception, possibly identity theft. She was planning this while your husband was dying. What do we do now? We destroy them." His voice was hard. "We file a counterpetition immediately. Fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit theft. We request an emergency restraining order preventing any access to your financial accounts. And we refer this to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Can we do all that? Margaret, you have evidence of a sophisticated criminal conspiracy. This woman spent months setting you up, stealing your documents, and manipulating your family against you. She's not just trying to steal your money, she's trying to steal your life." The counterpetition was filed that afternoon. By evening, word had started to spread through our small community that there was more to the story than anyone had realized. My phone started ringing. Church friends who'd heard about the hearing called to offer support. My neighbor Tom, who'd known me for 15 years, called to say he'd testify that I was sharp as a tack if needed. But the call that surprised me most came from Emily, Derek's 22-year-old daughter. "Grandma," she said, her voice shaky, "I need to talk to you. I've been feeling sick about this whole thing." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I never believed them, Grandma. You're not confused. You're not incompetent. You're the smartest person I know. And I think I know why they're doing this." Emily came over that evening, and what she told me made my blood run cold. "Mom's been acting weird for months," she said. "She's been obsessed with money, always talking about how much everything costs, how expensive college is, how they can't afford our lifestyle. She keeps mentioning how much money you and Grandpa had." "Did she say anything specific?" "Last month, she was on the phone with someone, I think her sister, and she said, 'Margaret's sitting on a fortune while we're drowning in debt. Someone needs to make her face reality.' And then she saw me and hung up." "Oh, Emily, there's more, Grandma. I saw her taking pictures of your credit cards when you left your purse on the kitchen counter last month. I thought it was weird, but I didn't know what to say." "Why didn't you tell your father?" Emily's face crumpled. "I tried, but Mom told him I was just being dramatic, that I misunderstood what I saw. Dad's been so stressed about money lately that he believed her." "What kind of money stress?" "Their mortgage is behind." Mom's been shopping like crazy, buying clothes and stuff for the house. Dad works hard, but it's never enough for her lifestyle. She keeps saying they need a financial breakthrough. The picture became clearer. Brittany hadn't just seen an opportunity when Robert died. She'd been planning for it. She'd been positioning herself as my helper, gaining my trust, learning about my finances, all while building a case for my incompetence. Emily, would you be willing to testify about what you've seen? Grandma, I've been hoping you'd ask. I can't watch them do this to you. It's wrong. That night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just the evidence from Robert's safe, but the support of people who actually knew me, who could see through Brittany's manipulation. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had allies. I had evidence. And I had something Brittany had underestimated from the beginning. The determination of a woman who'd survived 68 years of life's challenges and wasn't about to be defeated by a spoiled daughter-in-law with delusions of grandeur. As we prepared our counterattack, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Powerful. Brittany thought she was hunting a wounded deer. She was about to discover she'd awakened a lioness. The second hearing was held in the same courtroom, but this time I walked in differently. My shoulders were straight, my head was high, and I carried myself like a woman who had nothing to hide and everything to fight for. Brittany and Derek were already seated at their table, but something had changed. Derek looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his tie. Brittany kept glancing at the door like she was expecting trouble. They were right to be nervous. Robert Hutchinson stood as Judge Harrison entered. Your Honor, we have filed a counter-petition with evidence that this guardianship case is based on fraud and constitutes systematic elder abuse. Judge Harrison's eyebrows rose. That's a serious allegation, Counselor. We have serious evidence, Your Honor. The security footage played on the courtroom's large screen. There was Brittany, clear as day, photographing my bank statements in Robert's office. Timestamp, 3 months before Robert's death. There she was copying account numbers. There she was trying to break into the safe. The courtroom was silent except for the quiet sound of Brittany's criminal activity being documented in high definition. Your Honor, Robert continued, we also have a letter from the deceased husband, Robert Williams, documenting his suspicions about Mrs. Derek Williams's activities, written just 2 weeks before his death. Robert's letter was read aloud in the quiet courtroom, his voice speaking through his words, describing how he'd watched Brittany systematically gathering our financial information while pretending to offer sympathy and support. Judge Harrison turned to Brittany, his expression stern. Mrs. Derek Williams, can you explain why you were photographing financial documents in a dying man's office? Brittany's composure cracked. I was trying to help organize. I thought if something happened to Mom Williams, it would be good to have copies. Without her knowledge or permission. She was so upset during that time. I didn't want to burden her with details. But you used this organization as evidence of her incompetence in your petition? No, Your Honor, that's not. Robert stood again. Your Honor, we have additional evidence. Bank records showing that Mrs. Derek Williams attempted to access Mrs. Margaret Williams's accounts using claims of the account holder's confusion, testimony from the granddaughter about suspicious behavior, and documentation proving that every incident cited in the original petition was either fabricated or grossly misrepresented. The evidence mounted like an avalanche. Emily's testimony about the credit card photos, the bank manager's statement about Brittany's attempts to access my accounts. Even Mrs. Henderson recanted her grocery store statement, admitting that Brittany had called her and suggested that I seemed confused. Derek's face grew paler with each revelation. Finally, he stood up. Your Honor, I had no idea about any of this. I thought my mother was really having problems. Brittany told me. Judge Harrison held up a hand. Mr. Derek Williams, are you saying you were unaware of your wife's activities? Completely unaware, Your Honor. I would never have supported this if I'd known she was lying. Brittany turned on Derek with fury. You spineless! She caught herself, but the mask had slipped completely. Judge Harrison's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Derek Williams, this court finds evidence of fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit theft. I am immediately dismissing the guardianship petition and issuing a restraining order preventing you from accessing any of Mrs. Margaret Williams' financial accounts or property. But, Your Honor, Brittany's lawyer tried to intervene. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution. Mrs. Derek Williams, you have perpetrated a sophisticated fraud against a grieving widow, and this court will not tolerate such behavior. Two bailiffs approached Brittany's table. The restraining order was official. She couldn't come near me, my house, or my finances. As Brittany was escorted from the courtroom, she looked at me with pure hatred, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't the confused, helpless woman she'd tried to create. I was exactly who I'd always been, a strong woman who didn't back down from a fight. She'd thought she could manipulate the legal system against me. Instead, she'd handed me the tools for her own destruction. They were about to learn that stealing from a widow was a very expensive mistake. Within 24 hours of the hearing, Brittany's carefully constructed life began to collapse like a house of cards. The criminal charges were filed first: attempted fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit theft, and identity theft. Each charge carried serious penalties, and together they painted a picture of a woman who'd been systematically planning to rob a grieving widow. But the criminal charges were just the beginning. Derek discovered that Brittany had opened credit cards in both their names without his knowledge, charging thousands of dollars in luxury purchases while claiming they were struggling financially. She'd been living a double life, crying poverty to justify stealing from me while secretly maxing out credit lines to fund her shopping addiction. I had no idea, Derek told me when he called that evening, his voice hollow with shock. She showed me bills every month, talked about how tight money was, made me feel guilty for every dollar we spent. I thought we were barely making ends meet. How much debt, Derek? $47,000. In credit cards I never knew existed. The mortgage was behind too, not because they couldn't afford the payments, but because Brittany had been using the mortgage money for her personal expenses. Derek's paychecks were going to minimum payments on secret credit cards while she fell behind on their actual bills. She was planning to pay it all back once she got control of your money, Derek said, his voice breaking. She told me you were confused and needed help, but really she was planning to steal your entire inheritance to cover her debts. The divorce papers were filed within the week. Meanwhile, Brittany's social world was crumbling. The security footage had somehow made its way to social media. Not through me, I would never stoop to that level, but through someone in the courthouse. Within days, everyone in our small community had seen her photographing my financial documents while my husband was dying. Her part-time job at the boutique ended immediately. Her friends stopped returning her calls. Even her own family began distancing themselves once they understood what she'd tried to do. She tried to defend herself on Facebook, posting long rants about how I was a manipulative old woman who had turned everyone against her. But the evidence was too clear, too devastating. Each post just made her look more desperate and delusional. Emily moved in with me, temporarily, to help with college expenses, but really because she wanted to distance herself from her mother's disgrace. Having her in the house brought life back to the empty rooms. "Grandma," she said one evening as we cooked dinner together, "I'm so proud of how you fought back. You could have just accepted what they said about you, but you didn't." "I couldn't, sweetheart. Once I found your grandfather's evidence, I realized this wasn't about my competence at all. It was about greed." Derek started coming by again, slowly rebuilding our relationship. It would take time to fully forgive him for turning against me, but I could see that he'd been manipulated just as thoroughly as I had. "I should have known," he said during one of our conversations. "You raised me to be smarter than that." Brittany had an explanation for everything, and I wanted to believe her because the alternative was admitting my wife was lying to me. The final domino fell when Brittany's criminal trial ended 6 months later. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, community service, and full restitution for the legal fees she'd cost me. The judge called her actions a calculated assault on a vulnerable senior citizen and made it clear that elder abuse would not be tolerated in his courtroom. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was the simplest. She lost everything she'd been trying to steal. No access to my money, no comfortable lifestyle funded by someone else's assets, no respect from the community she'd tried to manipulate. 6 months later, the final consequences of Brittany's greed would complete her downfall in ways she never imagined. Today, as I sit in my garden teaching Emily how to plant roses, I can hardly believe how much my life has changed in just 1 year. The woman who was nearly declared incompetent in a courtroom is now leading a support group for elder abuse survivors, speaking at community centers about financial protection and living the most independent life I've ever known. Emily is graduating from college this spring with a degree in social work, inspired, she says, by watching me fight back against injustice. She's engaged to a wonderful young man named Marcus who calls me Grandma Williams with genuine affection and respect. Derek has rebuilt his life too. The divorce was finalized 8 months ago, and he's dating a teacher named Sarah who treats me like family from the first meeting. We have Sunday dinners again, but now they're filled with laughter instead of tension. "Mom," Derek said recently, "I owe you more than an apology. You taught me something about strength that I'd forgotten. Watching you fight for yourself when everyone had given up on you, it made me remember who raised me." Brittany served her probation and moved across the state. I heard she's working as a cashier somewhere, struggling to rebuild her credit and her reputation. I don't wish her harm, but I don't feel sorry for her either. She made her choices, and consequences have a way of finding people who prey on others. The legal victory was satisfying, but the personal transformation has been life-changing. For 43 years, I thought I was half of Robert and Margaret. When he died, I thought I became nothing. But that courtroom battle taught me something profound. I was never half of anything. I was always whole. I just needed someone to try to take my power away, to remember how to use it. I speak regularly now at senior centers and community groups about protecting yourself from financial abuse. My story has become a cautionary tale, but also a hopeful one. Because if a 68-year-old grieving widow can fight back against a sophisticated fraud and win, anyone can find their strength when they need it most. The most important thing, I tell the groups I speak to, is to trust yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone is trying to make you doubt your own mind, ask yourself what they gain from your confusion. And remember, needing help isn't the same as being helpless. I keep Robert's letter framed in my office now, next to a photo of us on our 40th anniversary. His words remind me daily that even in death, he believed in my strength. "You are the strongest person I know," he wrote. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Looking back, I realize Brittany did me a favor, though she never intended to. By attacking my competence, she forced me to prove it. By questioning my independence, she made me fight for it. By trying to steal my identity as a capable adult, she helped me discover just how capable I really am. My scars from this experience have become my wisdom. The pain of betrayal taught me to trust my instincts. The humiliation in court taught me to stand up for myself. The fear of losing everything taught me what I'm truly made of. I'm 70 now, living alone by choice rather than circumstance. My house is filled with friends, family dinners, and the laughter of people who chose to love me rather than people who wanted to use me. Sometimes Emily asks me if I'm angry about the time I lost to grief and manipulation, but I'm not. Every experience teaches us something, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. "Grandma," Emily said the other day, "you're the strongest person I know." Hearing those words, Robert's words, from my granddaughter's lips, I knew something beautiful had happened. The strength my husband saw in me had been passed down to another generation. The wisdom I'd gained from my scars was already helping someone else. At 68, I learned the most important lesson of my life. I am not my age, I am not my circumstances, I am not what others say about me. I am exactly who I choose to be. And I choose to be a woman who turns her scars into wisdom, her pain into power, and her betrayal into triumph. If you're watching this and someone is trying to make you feel incompetent because of your age, remember this: experience isn't confusion. Wisdom isn't weakness. And sometimes the greatest battles of your life come when you think you're too old to fight. But you're never too old to fight for yourself. You're never too old to discover your own strength. And you're never too old to transform your deepest wounds into your greatest wisdom. My scars became my strength, and if you let them, yours can too.